Our parents, our dad's generation of preachers that are listening to this all
Are already offended by multiple things.
I don't know. They're maybe just extremely disappointed. Well, hey, listeners, welcome to just another episode of Church Chat. This is a podcast where we have conversations about ministry and life that you wish you were having. You probably don't even know you wish you were having them. You will. You will know it by the end of this conversation. At least we hope so. These conversations have been so great, and I am pumped to have another amazing guest and an amazing conversation. I feel like this one's going to be a lot of fun. My name is Josh. I'm one of your hosts.
And I'm Emily, and today's guest once bombed an opening joke at a conference so bad that the only sound was the awkward silence and people yelling, "Is this guy serious?" as the door slammed as they left. He's a rabid Red Sox fan, which you can't see this, but he's repping the Red Sox right now. He excels at creating fun, engaging environments for people to connect with God, and he's the program director of Camp Orchard Hill.
Dallas,
Derek
PA.
Hodne, welcome to Church Chat.
Thank you. Awesome to be here. Thank you for leading with one of my most awful moments. That's Josh.
Yep, Josh snuck that in there. I would love to hear that story.
He's a Norwegian, which we didn't.
I know, that's a new
I always
fact.
forget that about him, but he's like proud of that, and he also loves the most awful soda or pop wherever you're listening to
It is
this.
soda.
It's called Moxie. It's
gosh.
like cough medicine. He just put on a Moxie cowboy hat made out of Moxie cardboard cases.
That's made out of cases. Now I know it's bringing props to a podcast is like bringing a knife to a gunfight, I guess. But it's fodder. It's good stuff. It's usable. Something to talk about. Yeah, this is a Moxie hat that was made for me. Yeah, Red Sox, Moxie, Norway, fanny packs. That sums me up.
He's a great dude, and one of my great friends. I've had the honor of calling this dude a friend, and also partnering with him in ministry for a long time. Derek, man, it's just so cool to have you on here.
It's a lot of fun. I was a little reluctant at first when you asked me because I just don't feel like I have. It's church chat, and I'm not a pastor, but. We partner with the church, so I feel like we got something to offer, and you sold me on it.
Well, you partner with the church a lot. You work with a lot of pastors and youth leaders. You also grew up in a pastor's home as a PK. The man, Dwight Hodne. I don't know, this podcast reaches beyond kind of like our tribe's walls to leaders all over the place in the church world, but we kind of share a tribe in the EFCA and EFCA East, and your dad is a legend in the EFCA East circles. Legendary.
Both our dads were definitely cohorts in crime there, those guys.
Old school preacher dudes who did it all.
I love it. Well, hopefully we didn't spoil any of your two truths and a lie selections, but we'll let you take it away.
All right, so two truths and a lie. And this was tough for me. I listed a lot, and I'm a storyteller. So it's kind of a blurry line between truth and a lie sometimes. I've imagined things, and I forget what actually happened or what what the story is. But I got you here. So two truths and a lie. I named my first chest hair. The first chest hair I ever grew. I named it. All right, that's number one there. Two, I have a rough copy written of a biblical detective comic strip starring Josh and I.
Oh man!
And number three there, I refuse to wear stocking feet in my home. So to wear socks only. It's either barefoot or shoed, but no stocking feet in my home. Personally.
For you, or is that like a house rule you impose on your kids?
This is for me.
This
is personal. This is just for me.
I feel like I'm going to ruin my amazing winning streak with this because you know him far better than I do.
Yeah, but I have no clue. All of these are about crazy enough to be in Derek's That's the problem with my friend Derek. They're all outlandish. All the true stories blur the lies because they're all crazy.
Although I feel like that's such a teenage boy thing to do, to like name your first chest hair. So that I could totally see.
I'm losing this, by the way.
I know,
Derek.
I am
like she's
solidly
killing me
winning.
in it.
Yeah, I've heard it's been embarrassing how badly.
But you don't have to say it's embarrassing. The chest, I'm a little struggling. Like I know that Derek, I don't know what the right word is here, admires me enough that he does an impression that he's pretty proud of
you.
I don't.
Oh,
yeah,
I need to
I don't know
hear
if
that.
it's. Which makes me think that maybe at home he's coloring comic strips about us doing ministry together.
Which, if
got a little bromance.
I want that to be true so bad, so that we can like make that a regular feature on the blog. Like it could be like a syndicate. It wouldn't be syndicated, but like, or we could start syndicating it through all of EFCA. Like all of the districts.
Romantic moments.
I really love that.
The comic strip. So, but I don't know. Like that's. Did he take his obsession with me from doing imitations of me, sometimes just to his own family, to the level of actually drawing a comic strip?
Well, and like you guys are detectives, so that's amazing.
Archaeology detectives named Jot. It's Jot and Tittle are the names because it's J-Ot. So that's Jot. And and they're detailed. Detectives are detailed, so every jot and tittle.
That is actually like
it's
genius. If that's a lie, like that needs to be a thing now.
Do not encourage him.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay, then I'm just gonna go that the stocking feet. I bet you are a sock person.
I feel like I've seen him in socks walking around. So I'm gonna agree with you. I'm not gonna drop another one. I think the socks is a lie.
The lie is the comic strip.
Oh no!
Thank the Lord.
It's all up here, but I haven't drawn it yet. Yeah, the chest hair is his name was Chester, chest hair.
Oh my gosh! And why are you anti-sock?
The socks, I can't do it. It's a sensory thing. It's shoes and socks I like together. Bare feet I like, but not just the stocking feet, not the socks.
Let me ask you: Are you a sandal guy?
I'm a Croc guy.
You're a Croc guy. Crocs with socks or Crocs with no socks?
No socks. No socks with the Crocs.
They don't get sweaty?
No. I gotta let my dogs breathe.
All right, this is taking a turn. Our parents, our dad's generation of preachers that are listening to this all
are already offended by multiple things.
I don't know. They're maybe just extremely disappointed.
But I do hope if you ever need a place to publish Jot and Tittle, like EFCA East blog, it is yours. You have the space.
Can we stop referring to it as if it is an actual thing? Like you just said, like Jot and Tittle. Like it's not an actual thing. There's lots
your destiny.
There's lots of.
It's just perfect. It's
meant to be. You were born for this. Yeah.
I love it. Well, clearly this segues into our topic so well. We're talking about crazy ministry stuff, moments, having fun being in ministry. I think ministry gets a bad rap for being a dirge, essentially, and just getting, the joy of being in ministry. So Josh did mention you're a PK, and then you were a teacher.
I am.
And then you kind of segued to camping ministry. So tell us more about that journey, how that happened.
Sure. Yep. So I started out actually here at Camp Orchard Hill. My dad was a director here at camp, and so I was born here, lived here for a little bit. But then he and some other families planted a church in Dallas, and so Fellowship Church. I grew up going there, and as a PK, I didn't feel a lot of pressures that I hear some PKs talking about. I think I think a big part of that is my parents, how they approached it. My mom was never a typical pastor's wife, I guess, in a sense. So she's very, very silly, very out there, and I I loved growing up in going to church regularly, helping out, Sunday school and youth group, and had a great youth pastor as well. So very much enjoyed the PK life. Didn't think too much of it, when I was growing up, but enjoyed the relationships in church. And we moved to Jersey when I was 16, going into my sophomore year of high school. My dad took a pastoral job in Jersey, and moving from Pennsylvania to New Jersey, I was not excited about at that time in my life.
Who would be?
Looking,
I
Just kidding. There's a lot of people in Jersey listening to this.
And there was this awful stigma, but I mean, Jersey's there's some wonderful spots in Jersey. I mean, and we loved the people there, and so I got nothing but love for Jersey. When we moved to Jersey, that was actually a big thing for me. I think I was really confident in church and at youth group, and had a good group of relationships and friends there. But in school, I was super shy all through elementary school, middle school, high school. I was a really shy kid. And at the same time we moved to Jersey, I started working at summer camp. And I think the combination of moving, having a chance to reinvent myself a little bit there with a new audience of people, and the confidence that I developed in the camp setting, that's where the two worlds kind of came together, and started working at camp seasonally. Did that all through high school. Went to college, not really considering that, camp could be a career, and knew that I liked working with kids. I had a gift working with kids and working with people. And so I thought teaching would be good. I had a couple fifth grade school teachers that made an impact in my life, and I thought I could do the same. So I went to Philadelphia College of Bible. Then it was Philadelphia Biblical University, now Cairn, and I got my degree in elementary education. And I taught in Jersey for a couple of years and loved it, and had no good reason to leave, except, the best reason, that God called us back to camping ministry here at Camp Orchard Hill. So I had stayed involved with camping, did a little speaking, did a little seasonal work still in the summer when I was teaching. And then an opportunity opened up to come back here full time, and talk to my wife, Lauren, about it. Did not think she would be on board, although she loves camp, and she and I met here. But when I brought it up, she essentially felt the Holy Spirit just telling her, let's do it. And that was enough confirmation. My dad has always talked about a push and a pull, looking for a push and a pull. And we felt both, and came back in 2006. So I've been in full-time camping ministry here since 2006.
What's your role look like now?
So at Camp Orchard Hill here, I'm the program director. I'll hire summer staff, and we run a day camp, overnight camp, and leadership training in the summer. So hire and train the staff, plan the program. That includes booking speakers and bands. That includes what type of program activities and equipment we do. That involves, sometimes donning a costume and dressing up as a walk-on character, which you're no stranger to, Josh. We know you've done that once. Then the rest of the year we do a big winter snow camp program. So same thing, booking speaker, band program, getting the staff together for that. And the fall and the spring, there's kind of rhythms of retreats and planning. And camping has this broad list of, just everyone does what needs to be done to work together. We have a fantastic team here, and that's in a nutshell.
This episode is sponsored by EFCA East, a district of the Evangelical Free Church of America. EFCA East exists to help develop transformational churches among all people by helping leaders live well, lead well, and multiply. We're here to serve you, whether you're in one of the 6 states that make up EFCA East or not. You can find more from us at efcaeast.com. Okay, so I am not a funny person at all. That is just,
oh, don't tell yourself.
it's not my gifting. So I'm always fascinated by funny people and how they become funny, or like how that is developed in people. So you did mention that your mom has a great sense of humor. Where do you think and that you did kind of like reinvent yourself to kind of lean into maybe that side of yourself? When did you realize that you were funny, and how have you developed that in yourself?
Well, I appreciate even the the label as a funny person there. So, but yeah, my my mom brought a lot of that out. She is the type who would act like she doesn't know. Kind of went for a bubbly airhead feel, but she would say stuff that she knew was was either a little bit funny or even a little bit controversial, and act like she didn't know. So my dad veils it a little bit more, I think, as a pastor publicly, but he's super creative and lots of fun. And with the grandkids, I mean, he's the kooky one with the grandkids. So, so I got a lot of that growing up from my folks. I'm the youngest. I'm the baby of the house too. So I think that with that sometimes comes the the life of the party, happy-go-lucky, kind of demeanor. And I watched a lot of comedy actually growing up. So on Comedy Central, probably some things I maybe jokes I shouldn't have been hearing it in middle school and stuff. And I love now like dry bar comedy and stuff, the things like that, the things that you can learn from a comedian or a comic about delivery and timing. I think those things just from listening to them, and I'm a people watcher too. So just observing people and having conversations with, I can't tell you how much Josh and I use the word fodder, how much fodder I've gathered from talking to people, like kind of just starting conversations or reaching out to somebody or asking questions of people. And I mean, everybody's kind of a character out there, right? And so you start to glean little things from people and learn things about them and just kind of observe funny things. So I guess that's kind of my thing. I was a big Seinfeld watcher as a kid. I don't know. I mean, I think I can say that on this show here. That's so love that kind of humor.
We talk about this a lot, and I think it's something that all communicators can improve on. Like it translates to preaching. Even if you're very serious and exegetical and intellectual in your delivery, there's things to learn from like that world, that funny world, that will help engage your audience. And if you don't care about engaging your audience, I don't understand. Even if you're like real serious in intellect and exegeting a passage, I think it's almost irresponsible. Like God's entrusted this audience to you, But we've talked about this a lot. It is so hard. I feel like I'm a decent communicator, and I can be funny, and I have stories, and yet it seems super hard, especially when you're talking like those of us that preach every week, to like have fodder, to stay like fresh with our stories. That's why, like, I don't know. If you're a pastor that preaches or teaches, youth pastor, any kind of position in ministry, you look at your bookshelves. There's probably like illustration book. Like we have to consume more books about illustrations and more like dad joke books in our offices than anybody, because it's a struggle. Like to keep coming up with that. Like, how would you? I know you've given me stuff. I actually took some of this advice. But how would you encourage people to stay fresh with their storytelling, with their illustrations, with their fodder, with their funny?
I think knowing your audience, right? Which so much comes down to relationships, right? I mean, with what we do, and you want to make connections. You and I talk in the camp setting, and I think a lot of this translates to the church setting as well. As much time as you can put in off stage makes those connections that you make there make you more relatable, on stage. And I mean, there's a saying, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. So when you have a relational connection with people, engagement is there. We talk about music, right? And so I think it doesn't have to necessarily, you don't have to be up on pop culture. You don't have to be on the cutting edge of that. Although as a dad of a high schooler, I've really enjoyed taking the, outdated teen slang and using that to my advantage to get some cringe laughs. And so I think, engaging people, we talk about in this setting too, brains, brawn, and beauty. I kind of took that from our school: academics, athletics, and the arts, however you want to frame it. You have people who have all different kind of personalities and interests, right? And so if there's an academic level, that's important and that's valuable, but also athletics or sports or that world is valuable, and the arts as well. And so we want to engage people on all different levels. And so that's I think that rings true for students and adults. And I think, so my wife told me, I kind of walked through some of the questions with her, and she talked about, I have a gift of hospitality, and I mentioned that with my mom a little bit. I'm bent on making people feel at home, I think, or feel comfortable. And how do you make someone feel seen, heard, welcomed? And so sometimes you put other people at ease. You have to be willing to be a little bit silly yourself and take a risk. And sometimes the fodder comes from those situations. So I mean, is this the time to tell the story here?
Please.
What story?
The one from the intro.
Any stories? Yeah.
The intro story. So I was invited to come to a Christian school leadership conference, high school Christian school leadership conference. And it was in DC. So, it wasn't even necessarily going to be an audience. Maybe it was that would come to camp. But it was an opportunity where there was a challenge before me to create some content for them. And I thought I could be serving the Christian schools, but also I looked at it as a fodder-tunity, for lack of a better term. Yeah. So I had a buddy, a guy who worked for us. He was a kid at the time, did video work, and they asked me to create some videos for them. And this, just to give you a frame of reference for this conference, they called me and said, hey, we have this conference we're doing. We have all these gifted, talented speakers coming, to influential speakers, and we want you to come. And I'm thinking, wow, thank you. But I had to let them finish. They said, we want you to come in between those talented speakers, and if you could just lighten the mood and tell some jokes, and maybe play some games. And so I mean, I got past the pride of that pretty quickly. And I said, all right, well, what are the topics they're talking about? And they said, well, the first time you'll be on between, it's a conference on human suffering. So we'll be talking about poverty and world hunger and sex trafficking. Between those two, we'd like you to kind of lighten the mood. So,
it's quite the setup there.
There's not many situations, I think, worse than hey, can you lighten the mood between these two? These two topics?
Give us a picture. Like, how many people are at this thing?
Yeah, 800 high school students. We're in a ballroom, a hotel ballroom in DC, and so as I'm driving down there, talking to my buddy who's doing the video, which is a side note about partner with creatives. Other creatives who can help you, and don't do it on your own. But we'll come back to that. But I'm spitballing with him, and I had just seen a Christian comedian at a Youth for Christ banquet, and his opening line, he got up there and said, "Hey, this is my first Youth for Christ banquet. I've done a number of Youth for Satan banquets, different vibe." And so I thought, okay. I can steal that a little bit, and the first speaker gets up, he talks about poverty, and then I get up with no introduction, they didn't tell.
Nobody set you up and said, hey,
they didn't set me up, no setup. My name shows up on the screen. As far as they know, I'm the next speaker, and I get up there and I say, this is my first Christian school conference. I've done a lot of association for devil schools conference. different vibe, and a ballroom of 800 people, dead silent. You can hear a pin drop. Nothing.
Oh my gosh.
Except the panic bar on the door in the back. This lady slams the panic door, and as she marches out of the room, says, "Is he serious?" and that's it. And so I just kind of like let off some steam and said, who wants to play Simon Says?
Oh my gosh.
They told me they wanted edgy. They said they wanted, this was like back, they said, like Trip and Tyler stuff, like, some edgy Christians. So, I mean, at the same conference, there was a Globetrotter there who asked me to do a dribbling fail with him where I get up and I'm in character, in 80s basketball shorts and get up there and start dribbling and then he was going to show me up. I was going to act like I was showing him up, and then he was going to, we're going to have a little dribbling competition. And then he asked me to give away, the giveaway for him, the basketball. So I'm in like a Ben Stiller character, ooh, hey, whoa, dribble, you ain't got nothing, and so dribbling with the guy, and then I have the basketball. Who wants the basketball? And putting getting the crowd pumped up, and they're screaming for the ball. Then, I finally point out a portion of the crowd I'm going to give the ball to, and decide the best way to deliver this into a crowd of 800 kids is going to be to throw up the Hodne hook. That's my famed hook shot, basketball hook shot. So I scream out Hodne hook, and I throw a hook shot into this crowd of 800 kids. And I failed to anticipate in hanging in the middle of this ballroom is what I can only describe as, I call it a bling-delier. It's a chandelier with probably 1,000 crystals, hanging down from the ceiling. I mean, it's very ornate. And so I throw up this hook shot, and the second it leaves my hand, I the gleam of the the prism off the bling-delier catches my eye. And, you can't take it back when the ball is in the air, and it without fail sailed right into the top of the bling-delier. And like a game of Plinko, this thing starts bouncing around inside the bling-delier, and the kids underneath it scatter like oil and water. Just they're diving over chairs, trying to get out of the way as these crystals come raining down, and this basketball hits again. The room is dead silent, and I just yell out, "Swish!"
Nailed it.
Yep.
Nailed it.
Oh man.
Kobe.
Yep. Okay, so I am so impressed with people who can recover quickly like that, because that for me, I think I might have just started crying or thrown up. Like, it's just like, oh my gosh, what have I done?
You looked like you were gonna start
right,
crying.
I know.
or
I wish
throwing
you
up
could have
as-
seen. I was like,
in
this.
the middle of
Oh
the
my
story.
gosh. So, how do you develop that skill of just like bouncing back when things maybe don't go how you are anticipating?
In our setting here, when we train our staff, we talk about celebrate challenges. It was one of our big things. Also, we try to train up. I work with teenagers and college students a lot, and camp. We set ourselves up for situations that are seemingly impossible sometimes, where we have a small group of staff where we're trusting teenagers and high school students to work out a plan that we've set forth, and so we leave margin for failure as well, and know that we're going to, at times, things are not going to go as planned, things are going to fall flat. They're going, and I think the recovery, it's just some part of it's survival. I mean, like we got to move on. What else am I going to do? But I think just the willingness to learn from it, grow from it, and collect it. But that's, I talk about it like as the fodder that you develop is a lot of it comes from failure, and we learn so much. I mean, you guys have talked about this. Oftentimes we learn so much more from failing than we do from our successes. And then if you can get a laugh out of them, I've joked that my headstone, I just want to have carved in there a phrase that just says anything for a laugh on my headstone, just so when people walk by, they wonder how this guy died. It says anything for a laugh on his headstone. Like, how did this guy go? So
this stuff translates to preaching. It just, 'cause I feel like most of our listeners that preach probably are very familiar with the feeling of when you get off the stage and you're like, man, that was awful. I think sometimes you can feel that in the middle of it. And I know, like, I've always told myself, like, I've bombed plenty of jokes. And, there's part of it where you just got to keep going. Like, you got to embrace that. But we don't build in the margin for that when we're talking about preaching, maybe because it's a little more serious or whatever.
Right.
There should be maybe some margin and in our deliveries to say, listen, this joke might bomb. Like, not everybody's gonna love this. Not everybody's gonna engage. Not everybody's gonna get it. There's probably gonna be somebody sleeping, and that's okay. It's it's almost like embracing. You're very good at embracing kind of like those messy moments. Like, who else would have yelled swish after an accidental shot a basketball through a chandelier in a fancy ballroom with the best of the best from the Christian education world in attendance? Like, there's almost a part where we got to start embracing that more, like embrace the messiness, embrace that it's an imperfect thing, embrace it's okay to mess something up, to make a mistake, to bomb a joke. Just embrace it, and you're very good at that. I think a lot of that translates to our speaking, and we could definitely do a better job of like just being in the moment a little bit and not taking ourselves too seriously, and collecting. I like that, collecting, what you can learn from both the wins and the kind of failures.
Well, it's kind of a hat tip to what Michael Martin was talking about. I don't know when his episode is going to come out in relation to this one, but about leaving room for failure as a wise thing to do. That should be part of our kind of ministry rhythm. I do want to ask though, so I feel like humor and levity is not always welcome in churches. I'm sure you've experienced that. I mean, I think you have a cool context with camp ministry where that's like expected. But I'm sure having grown up in the church with your dad as a pastor, you recognize that that's not always welcomed. And I know that I think it was Eddie Cole asked you to do some stuff for one of our conferences. And I don't think I was there at that one, but I saw pictures and it just made me wonder, like, I wonder how that went, because
what did you do so those of you that aren't part of it, Emily just referenced the EFCA East, like our regional conference. It's got a couple hundred pastors representing a couple hundred churches at it. What did they have?
Right, they did have you do stuff, right?
It was fantastic. I love this. So Eddie spoke here and saw kind of the camp persona, which I think is so valuable for the church. I love the church setting, but I think it's valuable for the church setting to come to places like camp or different things where they can experience, and for a pastor to go with some of their congregation to a place, a men's retreat or ladies retreats, as you've talked about, or family camps or things like that. But yeah, Eddie saw me do the camp thing here.
Before you get to that, you finish that. So that you were just saying, like, why do you feel that's so good for churches and pastors to get off site together to like a camp like setting?
Yeah, there's so camp has its own shortcomings, that we recognize, and we know, we know kind of what we are and where we serve the church and we partner with the church. And there's certain things that we can't provide that the church, only the church can provide. But I think church and church leaders need to understand that there's certain things that the church setting may not be able to provide, that you need to either bring in or go step out and experience in a different way. And if you're not the one doing it or creating it, it's okay. You've facilitated it, and so I think that's, and it should be, hopefully that's freeing for a pastor or a youth pastor or a leader. I mean, our whole philosophy with Winter Blast, our snow camps, is let us take care of the logistics. Let us book a speaker, a band, and program. Trust us, and we have to earn that trust and be trustworthy. But youth leaders then can come and do what they really need to be doing, which is building relationships with their fellow volunteer leaders and their students. And so they don't have to plan a retreat where they do all the games, they do all the cooking, they do all the preaching, they do, like, it's great that a lot of them can do that. And we have some amazing youth pastors we work with who could do all that, but should they be doing all that? When they do all that, they miss maybe what's most valuable is that time that you can get building into students and your volunteer leaders. And if you can find someone else who can who can meet those needs, and you might, and then you learn from them and kind of steal things from us as well as you go, and that's great.
The camp provides an opportunity for just different. I feel like when it's almost like, if you ever worked, our listeners ever worked in like the corporate world, or like you can, when you all of a sudden you step out with your coworkers of the office into a different setting, you just learn so much more about them. And there's like some barriers that come down, and you see people as a little bit more of a human and relatable. And what I heard you say was kind of like that camp provides like space for that, getting out of your Sunday morning routine. Your church provides space for that. Like, I'm assuming that's why you said pastors should go, like be in those spaces outside, because there's something special about getting to know and build relationships with people when you don't have a bunch of roles that you're fulfilling.
And it's a shared experience. Maxwell talks about it with, Leadership 101, just shared experiences. And your church has come and done work days, and you've come up, or you've done help serve the homeless here at camp, and we, with our leadership training students here, especially on the first level of Nehemiah, that's the leadership training. You build a bond with people when you do a crappy job with them, some sort of difficult or hard job, or you go through some experience, or even, for adults to come to camp, sometimes, depending on our housing, you got to walk to a bathroom or something like that, and that's a hardship for some adults, and so, but, you bond over shared experiences. And so it's, and then whatever connections you make there, again, it helps with engagement with your congregation, your audience, your people.
So anyway, I interrupted. You were answering Emily's question about the conference. Yeah.
So I remember I was talking about what I was doing. What was the original question was?
It was kind of a vague question, but I was trying to get at the why do you think it's important to, I mean, I think some people think it's like sacrilegious to be humorous in church. And then you end up with some pastors over trying to be funny, just to be funny. And that does not go well either. So there's kind of a happy medium. And how do you arrive there? And I was just saying, I think at that conference, because you're dealing with a solid, older generation of pastors who are probably like, what is this dude doing? Yeah.
So I tout myself as the Eastern Regional District Champion of Simon Says. So that's and I run a form of Simon Says that I'll say I copped from a guy who was here as a program director in between those times when I was seasonal and when I came full time. It's just a style of Simon Says where you do what Simon says, not always what Simon does, and it can be pretty tricky and confusing, for. And I use it primarily with teenagers and kids, but it was one of the things that I did with the pastors here. And there's a certain element of honesty that's needed in order for the game to be successful. If somebody's out and makes a mistake, they're out. They're out of the game, and they have to be honest, which is harder with kids. But I got to tell you, with a group of pastors who won, they had to stand up first after they had gotten in their seat. Then they had to stand up. That was a stretch for me, and for them, I think. But then they also, most of them got out within the first two moves because they. It was. I don't know that it was more too confusing, but I suspect that some of them, even just their conscience was too heavy. They thought about making the wrong move, and they and just that was enough for them to be like, you know what, I should be
in my
out.
heart. In my heart, I did not. My body did what Simon says, but in my heart, I did not. So I'm out.
So, and I think they were happy to be out as well. But but you know what, though, a lot of them really talked to me afterwards and talked about enjoying, that. I did a couple other little challenges and games with them, minute to win it type games and challenges. And, it's not even that you have to do it yourself, but I talked about partnering with creatives. Like there's so many creative people in your churches, partnering up with creatives, to help reach out to your audience there. And it's not always funny stuff either. You talked about creativity, Josh. You and I, like, you kind of got me going on some of this, and actually my wife Lauren as well. There's a book called Sacred Spaces, and we tried to a lot of times create. We talked about experiential worship, right? And settings where kids, or in your church, people get up out of their chair and move in response. Because I can sit in church and hear a stirring message, and the Spirit can move in my heart. And if I don't have to get up and move in response to it, or have something concrete or tangible to remind me of it, life happens, and I can move on, and it can stay private. We tried at camp a lot of times, and I think this can translate into church, even though it takes a while to build a culture of it. And you might be able to speak more to that, where the audience, congregation, it has to get up and move, and it can be as simple as getting up and writing something on a piece of paper. It can be you've used the Solvay paper, where we drop it into an aquarium of water, and you see it, dissolve. I mean, it's a classic camp thing, but at a campfire, they write, their sin on a paper and throw it in the fire, kind of thing. But I mean, these are things that are, kind of memorable, and we have themes at camp, and you'll have a pastor will have a theme with their messages. And when there's something tangible that you can take home, we had a theme that was all in, and it might not work in church, but every kid went home with a poker chip. But like, I talked to kids from camp that are now staff members who still, they made that into a necklace. They have this little poker chip that reminds them of that summer. And so tangible things, and things where you get up and move, these experiential worship things, that's a huge part of creativity.
Yeah, and it's not weird. It's using all of the things that God's given us, right? Like he's not just giving us ears and mouths, like he's giving us eyes. And there's things that are more acceptable in church world when you're talking about this. Like we all use visual things. A lot of even older congregations are used to seeing visually points illustrated on the wall, and it's really about just using your whole being in part of worship to not just hear the word, but to respond. I think maybe in like evangelical circles or whatever church world you're listening to, we're more comfortable with the hearing or better at that part, and less good at response of any type. It almost gets like thrown out. Well, we don't want to have altar calls, okay? So we're just we're not gonna. That's too weird, so we're not going to do that. And it does take a little bit of building into the culture, but You mentioned the Solvay thing, so that's something that I had gotten off a friend, and we had experimented together to see if it worked. Fish tanks full of water, and Solvay paper is this unique thing they use in the knitting world.
Really?
Or hemming or sewing dresses. It's a dissolvable, like clear paper that you can write on that when it's in water will dissolve. So like I guess you make a dress and you wash it.
And then it's gone.
That stuff. The weird
You're
stuff.
knee deep in the knitting world, aren't you there, Josh?
Knee deep in it, brother.
Yeah.
And so I remember we experimented with that with camp, and it was a big deal. We talked about, God and how he treats our sin, and moving it as far as the east is from the west. Well, what's that look like? That's something that I don't know what that looks like. And so we put these fish tanks up and had people come, and they wrote on this, sin that maybe they had been struggling with or had received forgiveness for, but still were stuck in the guilt of it all. And they wrote on those, and we had the fish tanks lit up so you could really see from underneath. And they drop it in, and they just see it come apart
really
and
cool.
dissolve right in front of them. At camp, like, people probably listen are like, oh, that's great for kids, right? Like, oh, that's good kid stuff. This isn't junior church.
Right.
All those things that we use to just because we're uncomfortable or we don't want to work hard, So I did that during a Good Friday service. And now our Good Friday services are usually different. We had these fish tanks set up all along the front, and people did communion and on benches all across the front of the sanctuary. And we had Solvay on there, and they wrote. And I had like an 80-year-old woman, man, after that, talk to me about how powerful that was, the sin, just watching that disappear. And, I mean, that's an old lady. That's okay to say, right? Like, that, like, had that powerful experience. I think sometimes we don't, because it's uncomfortable or whatever, we don't allow people to really understand what they hear or respond to it in ways that are maybe physical or using their other senses, and we're missing out. Like, God created all of it to worship him.
Or we're nervous that there's not going to be a response, that nobody's going to nobody's going to stand up or and that then we're leaning on our own understanding or concerned that the Spirit's not going to move. I mean, anytime we do something like this, a lot of times, so you're up at camp or the speaker's up there doing it, I help partner with them to prep for it. But I just want to, like, I'll be behind a curtain or in the back and just kneeling and praying. And it could be you or me, or it could be a prayer team. I mean, we pray for the Spirit to use something like that, right? And it's amazing, when you do that, the responses that you see when and like you said, we're using the physical response where there's music. I mean, there's just the tangible things that are. I mean, Josh, we kind of talked about the impersonation of you. There's nothing mystical about this, man.
Here we
you
go.
Believe that? That's crap, man. Listen, you need to understand that all you have to do is get up.
That is
Terrible.
Amazing.
That's a terrible.
There was this dude on the road. He was blind, and he shouted out, "Hey, Jesus!" Josh is like a mix of this is a way back reference from Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Jeff Spicoli, he's a surfer / Tim Tebow hybrid. And
well, I also was hearing a little bit of like Rocky Balboa in there, just a small little hit. I could.
Well, he's a Philly
exactly.
guy, right? So I mean, he's got that going.
And you get this weird accent when you do it in there. I don't know what it is. Like, I did a week-long summer camp, and at the end they did like a talent show. This is after a whole week of speaking to kids, right? Like, a whole week of it. And he get up, he dressed like me, and he got up.
You were wearing
I was
a bandana
skinnier
that week.
I was skinnier at the time, yeah. And he did this this whole talk, like 10-minute impersonation with an Oreo cookie, talking about, because I do this thing where I talk about God's love and nothing can separate you from God's love, right? Like, and all this stuff. And he was doing it about his love for this cookie, you know, and there's no better cookie and all this. There's nothing like this cookie. And there was like this kid who thought it was me. Like, I was like, have you not been paying attention all
Just,
week?
you know,
Given an Oreo object lesson.
You just
There's
been
nothing
sleeping
you
all
can
week.
do to make this cookie any better. And there's nothing you can do to make this cookie any worse. It's perfect. It's America's favorite sandwich cookie. It's the Oreo, man.
oh my gosh, that is so good.
I do say man entirely too much. So there are things like, what would you say about people that would say, well, that's emotionally manipulative?
You know, camp is a place where you get like students, adults, you get away from the norm. A lot of times they put their phones away. They change their patterns and their habits at camp, and kids are a lot of times surprised. Oh, God speaks to me when I'm at camp, and we try to tell them it's not only that God's speaking when you're at camp. It's that a lot of the rest of the noise around you is put away, and you hear him speaking. He wants to talk to you, you know, at home and at church and in youth group, and so but we say, you know, a lot of times kids do respond or stand up, and I know the impersonation. I know you're actually very much the opposite of where you tell them this is not an emotional response. There's nothing, you know, mystical about this kind of you let them know this. If God's talking to you though, like, then respond, but don't feel like you have to. So a lot of speakers, you know, are really, really kind of good, and pastors at setting that tone. But if a camper stands up and you know, we hear kind of youth pastors talk about it afterwards, like, oh, this middle schooler, every time there's an invitation, they stand up. But one of our speakers, you know, spoke to that and said that there's a reason, you know, they're standing up at that time, or there's a reason they got up and responded at that time. And how many of us can look back to, you know, through the years in our spiritual formation and development, where it took a couple times for it to get, you know, I know this is true of me, for it to get through my head, or maybe more importantly through my chest, like to my heart, to where you know, God has spoken to me, and I responded, but you know, I either had forgotten or never followed through on it with some accountability relationships, or where I need or talk to a youth pastor about it. And so it's really, I think God uses our hearts and our minds and our emotions to speak to us, I believe. And so while it's not the end all, I think it's a channel or a conduit to God changing our hearts and changing our lives. So
yeah,
I think it's
like,
important.
Maybe the best part of it isn't that somebody actually stood up or responded in whatever way. Maybe the best part of it is the conversation that you can have, because that opportunity happened. Like, what's really going on with your heart? Why did you do that? You know, what do you need to work through? What can I help you process? How can I walk alongside you? I think maybe that's the part that sometimes gets left off that is necessary too.
This is a deep cut reference earlier in the conversation, but when you were talking about being hospitable, that's like a huge part of preaching that I think is often overlooked. And a lot of that is just about building connection with your audience and with other people. How do you do that?
We use there's a phrase that I stole from actually a trainer, like a staff trainer from the American Camp Association world, and he used a phrase called "the mortar matters," and we've kind of adopted that. Anytime you're building something, you know, I mean, you can stack up a bunch of bricks together and you have a wall, right? But it's, you know, it's going to be easily knocked over. And I'm no mason, but you put mortar in between those things and those bricks or stones or whatever, and that solidifies or strengthens, what you're trying to build. And so the phrase that we use it, and we use it at camp here, is that the mortar matters. The in-between times of relationships and connection with your staff, maybe, or with your congregation. We say that the mortar matters, and taking time to celebrate when God has done something, or taking time to go and have fun. We've talked a lot about fun and creativity. Well, with your church staff, do you go out and bowl? Do you have a bowling night with, every once in a while with your staff, or do you go out just to eat? Do you have them over? Do you do, and that's a huge commitment. It's extra time. And I mean, it matters with your family too at home. Those things, when we talk about building our staff team here, those are the things that you build those connections and those relationships, and those are stronger. And then you discover things about them, gifts and talents and abilities, fodder sometimes, and then you ask them to do something, or you're partnering together. Those times that you've spent building relationships and celebrating together are I think those are just so valuable when you're trying to be creative and work together and serve together.
That's so good. I had a older pastor who had spent a lot of time in ministry, and they were transitioning out of a role and didn't know what the next chapter was going to be at the time. Now is back in a different role in ministry. But they said to me, I was just building a team, pretty quickly went from like just me to a big team. He said, I wish I would have spent more time having fun with my team and doing stuff outside of ministry. And that's what I thought of immediately when you started talking about that mortar. It's such a good word for us all, for me too. Like I'm sitting here thinking, okay, when's the last time I just did fun stuff with my team? And the answer is not acceptable. It's been too long. I need to go do trivia night with my team, or eat a bunch of tacos. Karaoke is a great thing to do with your team. And if you don't have a team, your key leaders. One of our elders has a boat. I'm pretty sure we're just going to go out and have an elder meeting on a pontoon boat this summer. So fun stuff. Yeah, that's so good. Thank you for that, Derek. I got one last question before we hit it up with our last question. And that last question I have is, so you grew up, you spent a lot of time in a church home with amazing parents, and you've interacted with the church world. You're member and involved in your church, but also you work with a very large amount of church leaders. You've seen church leaders go through great successes. You've also watched as they've fallen apart in pieces, whether it's from circumstances they can't control or even from moral failures. I feel like you have a pretty broad perspective on the church world. So what's one piece of encouragement or thought that you could give to leaders in the church world right now that might be listening?
Man, I think there's a piece of advice that was given to me as I came into the camping world. I mentioned that guy, Chris King, who is the program director here, and asked him for advice. And he said, man, this question should be on the tip of your tongue always. How can I serve you? What can I do to serve you? And when we ask, it goes hand in hand with the hospitality that we talked about before. When we ask that question, what can I do to serve you? How can I serve you? It helps us to understand our staff better, our congregation better, our friends, just people. Helps us understand people better. What can I do to serve you? How can I help? And I mean, Jesus asked that question of people. What do you want me to do for you? And so, or with you in some regards. And so I think that's such a healthy part of relationships. And that's what at camp and in church, I think it's about. At camp, we say relationships, camper to camper, camper to staff, and campers and staff to Christ. And it really, doesn't it always come down to relationships? So I think that's super important. And a hard part of those relationships also is going to be, sometimes letting go at times too. A pastor of a church in Jersey I was at said they don't measure success by how many people they can collect in their congregation and in their church or on their staff. They measure success by their sending capacity. So how they can train people up and send them out to do what God has called them to do. At camp, it's people kind of grow out of, they can only be here from age, sometimes 16 to 22 maybe. So we are always sending people out, but it's so fulfilling to see them go and do what God has called them to do and to have played even a little part in it. And I think that can translate into the church chat community as well.
Yeah, that's good.
I love it. Well, we end every episode by just sharing something that is saving our life right now.
Man, I had a list again. I got to pick, but it's Scrabble.
Ooh, I like that.
Can I say that it's simultaneously saving my life right now, and it's teetering on the brink of it could destroy my family.
No way.
I bought for my wife a Christmas present she'd wanted for a while. It's a magnetic Scrabble wall board in the kitchen, and yeah, right.
That's awesome.
So love me some words. Love just sitting and reading the thesaurus and I bought a Scrabble dictionary. I'm knee deep. But I'm a meddler in Scrabble. That's where things could crumble down. I can't just play my own game. I'm peeking at people's letters. This is confession time.
Oh, no.
I'm not for my own gain. I just want the best word to be put, and this is me justifying. I just want the best word to be placed, and it doesn't have to. I don't even have to win, but I do. I'm a serial meddler when it comes to Scrabble, and it's dangerous. So pray for me that
I will.
That is amazing.
It sounds like you're knee deep in word nerdiness.
Which I very much support. I love that. Tim and I, when we first were dating, we would play Words with Friends. That game, good golly, it's like 11,
Who would
12
win?
years. Well, that's the thing. We had to stop playing because Tim would win, and I was an English major. I really love words and have kind of a high opinion of myself with words, and he was winning, and it just frustrated the heck out of me. So we had to stop playing.
I would love to high five Tim right now. Wish we could get Tim on here for a virtual high five.
Yeah, he's on a 12-mile run right now. So.
Oh, now I feel terrible about myself. Tim, rein it in, Tim.
Yep.
Quit showing us all up.
My mom is coming into town this weekend to go to IF gathering with me tomorrow at our church. And I am just so grateful that we live close enough that she can do that kind of thing. We thought it was a great boon for us to live in Pennsylvania when we lived there. We were 4 hours away from my parents, and that was delightful. But it's now we're an hour and 45 minutes away, and it's just so fun. My mom and I are really close. We've always been close, and I just one of those things. Man, I hope my daughter and I have that kind of relationship that she's excited when I am in town and come to visit.
I'm just gonna say, I think I've given serious ones the last couple times. Series 2 is just different level. It's Little League season, man, and there we go, saying man.
Yeah.
And I help with my kids. Baseball has always been a love of mine, and my dad was crazy about it. We would have to practice on vacation before we got to do the fun stuff. So I try not to be him, although my son would tell you that I probably creep in. that part of me probably comes out more than once. He's been teaching me how to coach him because he's you got to treat me like all the other kids. All right. But he got on the mound the other night pitching against his own teammates, man, and he had been working with the other coaches who had fixed some stuff for him, and it was one of those moments where I was like, "Whoa, what just happened? What am I watching?" He was just really doing good, and it's due to these other coaches. It had nothing to do with me and just Dylan, and so yeah, man, that was a really awesome thing, and man, it has been a true delight having you on here. Thanks for being so fun and for making ministry fun. It's refreshing, and I think we could all use a little bit more of it. And a little bit more laughter at ourselves, a little bit more fun. with our teams, a little more taking ourselves less seriously and embracing the margin and the mess. So thanks, Derek, man, for coming on here and spending time with Emily and I on Church Chat Podcast. And for everybody listening, thanks for listening. You guys are incredible. We love you. It's been so much fun. And we are just going to sign off by saying bye. See you later. The Church Chat Podcast is for educational purposes only. We dive deep into important and sometimes sensitive conversations and topics about life in ministry. Please know that the views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely the views and the opinions of the guests and the hosts and do not necessarily represent the organizations that we work for. Nor should our views or opinions be considered a full perspective of circumstances that may be mentioned in this podcast. Our perspectives are limited, and so will be this podcast. What we hope to do is have conversations and spark greater conversations that will lead leaders and their organizations towards greater health. The Church Chat Podcast is edited by Emily Gardner and produced by Emily Gardner and Josh Ott. The Church Chat Podcast is supported by EFCA East, an Eastern District of the Evangelical Free Church of America, covering 6 states. EFCA East helps leaders live well, lead well, and multiply, helping churches find new vitality and multiply transformational churches on the East Coast. The EFCA is multiplying transformational churches among all people. For more information, visit efcaeast.com. We hope you enjoyed this podcast and can't wait to see you on the next Church Chat episode.